If this is your first time visiting this channel, then what's good, whatever. And if you've been around this channel before, then you already know that I am an ex-Christian who came to Islam at the age of 21, and I've been Muslim for about a year and a half, and I have not looked back ever since. But of course, there's a big gap between me being born and then becoming Muslim at the age of 21. So what was life like as a Christian? Well, to start things off, I was a pretty normal kid in a country suburban town, born into a Christian household, Christian mom, Christian family, went to Christian church, Christian school, in a Christian town. Yeah, of course I was Christian. I was on the religion of my mom. And specifically, we were Catholic. So if you don't know, underneath Christianity, there's three main denominations. There's Protestantism, there's Catholicism, and then there's the Eastern Orthodoxy. So of course, as a child, just like all children, my faith was blind. I followed what my mom did, and she was Catholic, so that's what I did, and that's what we did. And I'd say in general, I was a pretty good kid. I mean, I tried to be a good kid. Of course, I made mistakes here and there, but in general, I think my mom would say that I was a pretty good kid. And then at the age of 15, that was whenever I moved in with my dad. So I was living with my mom until I turned 15. Then I moved in with him for my sophomore year of high school. But my dad, he's not Catholic. He's actually Protestant. That's whenever I became Protestant. Now I was on the religion of my dad. But when I turned 16, that's whenever I fell into the Illuminati rabbit hole. And if you watched my previous video about my experience with the Illuminati rabbit hole, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm not going to go into it here because, just go check out that video, right? Basically, the key takeaway from that video that you need to know for this video is that I found out that there's people in this world who are actively fighting against God in like a spiritual war. And so if there's people actively fighting against God, then shoot, there needs to be people fighting actively for God. That was whenever I went from just being a Christian because that's just what my parents was, and so that's what I was, to now I was a Christian because I had my own conviction. I had my own personal reasons. That was whenever I bought a Bible and then began to read it on my own. Unfortunately, though, I was very judgmental against people who were not as pious as me, or at least people who I didn't deem as pious as me. I was also very hateful against gays. I thought that the Bible was 100% true and that it was the only truth in the entire world. And I had a very literal interpretation of the Bible. In this time period, I started to cover my thighs because I thought that covering your thighs was a requirement in the faith, even though it's actually not. Which is kind of funny because now that I'm Muslim, it is a requirement in my new faith. And I also started to lower my gaze because Jesus says in the Bible that if you look at a woman with lust, then you commit adultery. And speaking of adultery, I used to follow the old law. So all of the Christians, for the most part, everyone no longer follows the old law because according to Paul, Jesus abolished that. But actually, Jesus himself says that it's not abolished. If the man himself is saying follow the old law, then shoot, I started to do that. And that sort of caused a bit of a clash between me and my family because it sort of creates a barrier between me and them. That's something I had to deal with at that point in time. Eventually I found out that the cross is actually a pagan symbol. So I stopped wearing that around my neck. Whenever I found out that Christmas was pagan, then I just straight up cut that off too. 3 years before I even became Muslim. Unfortunately, regarding my piety, I actually was extremely hypocritical because even though I was reading the Bible and I believed that I was a more pious person, in reality I was no different from any other kid. I was still cursing and I tried weed a couple times. I was still lying to my parents, doing things that I shouldn't have been doing. So yeah, I mean, I still was a regular kid, just someone who for the most part, according to my society standards, was generally good, but still made some mistakes that nowadays I look back and I'm like, yeah, I kind of sucked. And over the next couple of years, my piety, that fake piety that I had acquired whenever I turned 16, it began to fade away because I slowly escaped that Illuminati rabbit hole, which was my fuel. And as such, I also slowly no longer read the Bible as much or thought about it as much. By the time I reached college, I wasn't really as religious. I just straight up was not going to church at all during college. I wasn't really reading my Bible either. But my character, you know, the adab was still preserved. Like I still had good manners and whatnot, good dealings with people, but I still was doing things I shouldn't have been doing, like cursing and drinking and zina. Yeah, I mean, this, there was some good and there was some bad, right? But it was either in college or before college, but definitely in college that those seeds really start to pop up. But in college, there were some seeds that were planted in my head that was like, you know, the Bible was not 100% preserved. You know, it's been changed over time. And not only that, but we don't know who wrote it. And so the big question popped up, which was, you know, how do I know if I was born in the right faith? There's over 2 billion Christians in the world. At that point in time, there was, you know, almost 2 billion Muslims. There's a bunch of other religions that have less followers. So it's like, how do I know if I'm born in the right faith whenever there's 4,200 different religions? Those seeds were what caused me my junior year of college to research different religions and research my own religion. And then, of course, research Islam. This video is part of a series on my journey to Islam. I'm making this for those who are curious and for those who are in a similar situation or for those in search of truth. In the next part of the series, I'm going to talk about why I didn't choose some of the other religions. So yeah, just make sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. And I will see you in the next video. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.